Howdy everybody, welcome back to the channel. My name is Craig and I have a company called Templar Defense just outside of Houston, and for the last 9+ years we have been doing firearms training as it relates to self-defense law in the state of Texas. And today we are going to talk about the Karmelo Anthony Austin Metcalf case that has just wrapped up with a verdict of guilty of murder for Karmelo Anthony. The purpose of today's video is to help you understand how the jury got to its decision. Regardless of if you agree with it or not, I want to help unpack and help you realize from a self-defense aspect, from a Texas law aspect, why and how the verdict of a conviction of murder came down. So if you guys don't remember, back in April of 2025, this was at a track meet in Frisco, Texas, which is a suburb of just north of Dallas. Karmelo Anthony stabbed Austin Metcalf at a track meet. The Anthony family and the defense team claimed that it was self-defense. One of the things that they had discussed, or one of their defenses, was disparity of force and standing your ground law. On the opposite side, right, the Austin Metcalf family felt that it was just straight up cold-blooded murder. Well, today we're going to unpack that, and we're going to talk about stand your ground. We're going to talk about disparity of force. I want to help you guys understand why those two claims of self-defense from Karmelo Anthony fell through, right? And then I also want to help you understand why there was a conviction of murder versus manslaughter. Let's first talk about why the disparity of force defense fell through for Karmelo Anthony and his team. In the state of Texas, you are generally not justified in using deadly force against an unarmed person, that being you're equally sized and equally skilled, right? There are 3 instances in which we call disparity of force, in which the state allows you to use deadly force to prevent death or great bodily harm. One of those things we refer to as disparity of size. So one individual is smaller or larger than the other, and then disparity of numbers. So the defense claimed, Karmelo Anthony claimed, that he was attacked and that he was jumped by larger individuals, right? So the Metcalf brothers were much larger than Karmelo Anthony. I think at least Austin, who had his life taken away, was about 70 pounds larger. So there's a disparity of size. And then he also claimed a disparity of numbers, 2 against 1. And that's why he felt the need to pull out his knife and use it to protect himself. Let's talk about why the disparity of force defense fell through. So in order for a disparity of force claim to hold weight, there actually needs to be an active threatening use of force. Now, courtroom testimony from witnesses that pulled both from the defense and from the state painted a completely different picture than what the defense originally claimed, right? The defense originally claimed that, Anthony felt that he had to pull out that knife against multiple larger people to equalize the situation. Well, according to those testimonies, once again from both sides, that was not the case. Both sides said Metcalf and his brother did not ambush Anthony. They didn't jump him. So witnesses from both sides actually painted a completely different picture than what the defense claimed. The witnesses said that the actual instigation was started by Anthony as he was entering into another team's tent and was starting the verbal altercation. They said without any hands being placed on Anthony by the Metcalf brothers, he preemptively pulled out a knife and, quote unquote, said, "Touch me and see what happens." So that's why that disparity of force claim didn't hold up. The jury saw and said that you cannot use a deadly weapon to balance out a disparity of force claim when the other party hasn't even used simple force against you, right? So the witness testimony said hands were not even placed on Anthony before he pulled out that knife. So once again, you can't use deadly force, right, when it is just a verbal altercation at that point. So that's why the disparity of force claim went out the window. Now let's talk about the Texas stand your ground law and duty to retreat. So Texas has no duty to retreat as long as you meet 3 simple requirements. One of those requirements is you have a legal right to be present where force is being used. And number two, you did not provoke the other party, right? So you cannot pick a fight with somebody. You cannot instigate something. Somebody retaliates and you claim self-defense. There is another court case that we need to look back into from 2012. That's Raul Rodriguez v. Texas. I would encourage you guys to go look at it, but here's the summary. Mr. Rodriguez was a Baytown firefighter who got into a dispute with his neighbor Kelly Danaher over a loud birthday party that was going on. Mr. Rodriguez walked next door with, I believe, a gun, a video camera, and a flashlight. He stood at the end of the driveway, and as people were kind of gathering around because they wanted to see what was going on, he started to yell out the standard terms that most self-defense guys claim is, I'm standing my ground, I am in fear for my life. And when one of the partygoers stepped towards Mr. Rodriguez, he opened fire, shot two people. Mr. Danaher lost his life. Mr. Rodriguez was convicted of murder and sentenced to 40 years in prison for the murder of Kelly Danaher. So we have that as case law, right, that we can use to help interpret what happened with the Karmelo Anthony case, right? So that tells us that you cannot instigate something, you cannot pick a fight, you retaliate with deadly force and claim self-defense. So once again, previous testimony claimed that there was zero evidence of a physical assault before the stabbing. And when we are using self-defense, when we are using deadly force to protect against or prevent either ourselves or an innocent third party from death or great bodily harm, we can only respond with the same level of force that we perceive as being used against us. And so once again, due to the evidence, due to the testimony brought from both sides, there was no force that was used against Anthony before he pulled out the knife. So according to the jury, due to the evidence and the testimony from both sides, it was Anthony who instigated and started that conflict due to him entering into another team's tent and starting that verbal altercation. Now let's talk about why the conviction of murder came down instead of manslaughter. So during the trial, it was actually revealed and made clear that Anthony did show remorse, and he was visibly distraught after the event. And his family maintained that he never went to that track meet with the intent or the plan of killing anybody. I kind of agree with that. The definition of murder is the premeditated and unlawful taking of someone else's life. Now, that premeditation does not have to occur over several days. It comes down to what your mental state is at that time. You might have heard the term mens rea. So murder requires an act to be done intentionally or knowingly, knowing that what you're about to do can cause, or you are fully aware that what you are doing at that moment can or is capable of causing death or serious bodily harm. What manslaughter is it requires recklessness. So it means you consciously disregarded an unjustifiable risk. So think about you're at a party and you're shooting guns up in the air, right? You didn't intend for those rounds to hit anybody, but they're going to have to come down at some point. And if they do, that is manslaughter. So that's the difference between murder and manslaughter, that premeditation. That premeditation can occur at that exact moment, right? So it's about your mental state at that moment. Do you know at that moment that you're performing those acts, that those acts are capable of causing death or great bodily harm? So that's why the jury was able to convict, or why they did convict Karmelo Anthony of murder instead of manslaughter. I don't think that premeditation of him bringing a knife into a backpack, that may or may not have had a thing to do with the premeditation, right? But that is why that conviction came down. And that being said, guys, a knife is a deadly weapon. You've heard me say the term great bodily harm. One of the things that is part of great bodily harm is large or extremely painful wounds. A knife is a deadly weapon, right? So is a screwdriver, so is a blunt force object, right? So those of you saying that a knife cannot kill somebody, actually, yes, it does. I want this case to be a reminder of how tragic and how quickly a small, minor, petty dispute can spiral into absolute chaos when deadly force is introduced into the situation. And there are no winners in this case, right? You have two families that have lost two sons. One of them is dead. One of them is going to go away. While he was convicted for 40 years, his parole, he isn't up for parole until after 17 years of that sentence is served. Karmelo is going to be my age by the time that he is eligible for parole. The prime of his adult life is gone, right? So you have two families who are torn apart, two young individuals whose lives are ruined. One is dead, right? And one, for the next 20 years, he is going to be spent behind bars. The prime of his life is gone because of a split second decision, right? So I want this case to remind everybody that actions have consequences. I want you to be educated on use of force laws, right? What we can and what we cannot do. Encourage you to get educated, and I would encourage you to get training. So guys, thank you so much for watching the video. Feel free to put your comments down below. I will not tolerate any hatred or anything like that, but please have an educated discussion. I'm also going to put some resources down below on some of my favorite books that I have used over the past decade to understand use of force law, deadly force law, as it relates kind of in the entire United States, but specifically in Texas. So once again, do not want to not picking sides here, just want to have y'all understand how the jury got to its conclusion and why and why they chose what they did based off of the evidence and the witnesses. So guys, thank you so much for watching. Be safe, be smart, be skilled. We'll catch you on the next one.